Um, Thanks for joining, guys. This is the third webinar we've hosted. Something a little bit out of our wheelhouse, but thought it's kind of worth sharing some of the things that at least I see on a weekly basis. And of late, I've had quite a large number of resumes come across my desk in recent weeks, and it's normal for me. First of all, if you're not kind of sure about our company, we've got about a total of 30 part-time and full-time employees, salaried, and then of course commissioned sales staff. And we're growing too. So with that, like, there comes people that want a job or are curious about how things work. And I thought that I would try to tackle some of the interviewing mistakes that I see that are basically consistent with many people, and hope that you could take some of this into whether you are going into an interview to maybe work at a new brokerage or work at a brokerage. So you'd be interviewing the broker owner perhaps, or maybe you're looking to join a team. So you might be interviewing with the team leader themselves or a senior person within the company. And I'm going to tell a few stories along the way, and I hope it's not offensive. I don't think it will be, but I try to put analogies to a lot of the points that I try to get across. So I actually am going to touch on 5 or 6 different things that I have seen. And I'm going to start with the number one mistake / piece of advice that I've got for people heading into an interview. And it really begins with this thing. It's the mind. It's the mindset that you're taking into the interview that I believe is the number one thing that will make or break a good interviewee and a good interview. So what am I really saying? My advice is go into the interview with the idea that this is not about you. This is not an interview about you. This is an interview about them, meaning the team leader, the broker owner, and the company that you're ultimately interviewing to possibly be a part of. Now, some of you are going to sit there and you're going to go, well, hang on a second, Matthew. Of course the interview is about me. I mean, this is my life. This is my career. I'm vying for a job. I want a job. And that's all well and good. But I'm challenging you to say that the mindset shouldn't be about you. It should be, how can I help this company grow? How can I help this company get to the level that they want to be at? How can I help this company achieve their goals? And if you go into it with that mindset, then what usually happens is your goals and what you're trying to accomplish are either, you're going to find out whether you align with the company's goals and ideas versus trying to see if their goals and ideas really align with yours. It's going to make the next steps in the process way easier. You also have to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're being interviewed by. Like, if this is a broker owner, this person could have 10 agents, they could have 110 agents in their company. They see people like you all the time. Like, there's almost an exhaustion to the interview process. So if you go into it with a different mindset than most, you're going to begin to breathe a little bit of fresh air into this person's view of you, because you're taking more of an interest in them versus yourself. So now that we've got mindset underway or established, the following next few takeaways I hope will become a lot easier. We've all heard of the importance of making a good first impression. Well, what I'm going to suggest is create a strong first first impression. I'll say that again. Create a strong first impression. And what I mean by that is we live in an era where finding out things about people really isn't all that hard. If I spend 20 minutes, I can find out a lot about somebody by going on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, perhaps even YouTube. It's not going to be hard for me to do a bit of digging on this person. So what I would do, and what impresses me, is if somebody does this for me. What I would suggest is create a strong first impression by cleaning up your social media, get rid of the bikini shots, the bathing suits, the posing, the selfies in the mirror. Like, clean it up. Like, I'm not saying, you know, get rid of all the fun and good times out with your friends, but just be cognizant of how that person's going to look at your profile. And what I'm going to do once I've done that is I'm going to begin to put a package together, probably best in the form of an email. And in my email, I'm going to attach my resume. I'm going to attach links, one-click links to my Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn accounts. And I'm also going to do one other thing. I'm going to attach a 2-minute or less brief video on who I am, why I'm looking forward to joining in the interview process. And I'm looking to basically establish myself as somebody who stands out from the rest of the crowd. Because remember, I'm at this interview not for me, but for them. And that person is seeing a lot of people. I'm going to make a strong first impression by just doing something a little bit above and beyond. So one quick story for you on this 2-minute or less video, and I can't emphasize enough or less. I think the average human attention span lasts like under 30 seconds, which means half of you have like already zoned out. But I asked somebody to do this for me last week. And when I got the 2-minute video back in an email, it started with an apology. So there's the resume, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, 2-minute video, and a paragraph of an apology, basically saying that I'm sorry this video is 8 minutes long. I had so much to say, and I basically, I hope you're okay with it. So first of all, there's a strike. Like, I don't want to read more than I have to. Strike number 2 was you kind of went against the instructions. And then the big strike was this 8-minute video. All they did was talk about themselves. And it was terrible, absolutely terrible. You want to talk about not making a good first impression? That would have been it. So I hope I'm not terrifying you, because video at the best of times is a little bit scary. But this video is nothing more than to just kind of introduce yourself, show them that you've done a little bit of homework about the company, and that you look forward to seeing them on Friday at 1 o'clock, like whatever that time might be at. The next thing is a few secrets of a first impression. So I understand it's COVID right now, and that an interview actually probably isn't being done in person, at least not right now. But that's going to eventually change. And when you show up at the interview, what I would do is greet the person that actually is the first point of contact. It could be the secretary or the front desk staff. Let's just go on that basis that it is. Greet them with enthusiasm and excitement. You want to know why? Don't think for 1 second that that person doesn't play a vital role in the interview process. Don't think that the team leader or broker of record isn't going to ask that person what their first impression of you was when you walked in the door, which means you need to be on time, which means you need to look the part, which means it doesn't mean your hair isn't looking good and you're not looking presentable. You need to do that. You need to pay attention to body language and eye contact. And one further little tip, imagine you knew the person's name working the front desk before you got there, so that when you walk in, you're going, "Hey, Ashley, I'm Matthew. Great to meet you. I'm here to see Ron. for our 1 o'clock meeting. Like, that is going to blow that person out of the water. A quick story on body language and eye contact. About 2 months ago, I had a gentleman arrive at the office. He was early. He was in a looked good. He was in a suit, his hair. He's one of those like polo model guys. Like he was a good looking dude, and he really looked the part. And when I came out to greet him, he had his water or his coffee that our front desk, Ashley, had gotten him. And we go into my office and we sit down. And before his mouth even opened, before we even got going, the slouch in the chair, the elbow on the table, the lack of eye contact was enough to kill this person's interview. No matter what came out of this person's mouth from that point on, it just didn't matter. And here's what's funny. After their interview, which was cut a little short in a very respectful way, I went to the front and I said, "Hey, Ashley, what did you think?" And she goes, "He's super cute, but I'm not sure about him." And I go, "Really? Why?" And she goes, "I can't put my finger on it. There was just something about him." And I said, "Well, what do you think of this?" And I gave her the feedback, and she goes, "Don't hire him." And I go, "I'm in agreement." So there's a quick story for you. The next thing is do your homework. Do your homework means demonstrate that you've done some research on the company that you're interviewing with. It could be the person specifically, but to really impress that person, you might go a step further and really make sure you understand some of the key components of the company. So what do I mean by that? Well, one of my personal first questions when we sit down into a formal interview is, tell me what you know about our company. And can you imagine what the response is like with somebody that doesn't know a little bit about my company? It's kind of like deer in the headlights. They can't put a sentence together. They're struggling for words. They've been completely caught off guard. And I'm sitting there kind of scratching my head going, "You're here for me, right? You came into my office because you want a job at my company, but you can't tell me anything about the company? That's not a very good start." So do your homework. Find out somebody who works there. You can go on Facebook and link friends and see if you've got a friend in common that works at the company. Ask if you can use their name in the process. Pay the person a compliment. It could be, you sold a house for one of my friends and I heard you did a great job. You could recognize them for some community involvement that they do within the community. If they support a local charity, just a quick compliment can go a long, long way. Think of it almost like a bit of an icebreaker. So my recommendation is do your homework and maybe even get the elephant out of the room by saying that you know a little bit about the company before they even get a chance to ask the question. That'll really knock their socks off. Next one, ask questions. Ask questions. There's going to come a time in the interview where the interview might go one of a couple ways. I'll backtrack. It might go one of a couple ways. You might have a passive style person that you're sitting across the table with where they might ask you like, what questions do you have for me? Or you might have more of an active style where they take the lead and they're kind of asking and probing and doing a lot of the talking. What you don't want to have happen is be caught flat-footed. And flat-footed is usually when somebody who I'm interviewing just isn't prepared. They probably thought they were prepared because they had this list of questions in their head before the interview started. But once we get going, it's intimidating. You're a little shy. It could be nerve-wracking. Like these emotions begin to creep in and they throw you off your game. So my strong recommendation is write down your questions. What do you think's going to happen when you write down your questions? A couple of things will happen. One, you're 100% guaranteed to not forget your questions. So you'll make sure you get those out in the open. Number two, what do you think you're going to show that person that's interviewing you? You're going to show them that you came prepared. That's a big win. When I see somebody sitting across from me, looking the part, good body language, showed up on time, paid me a compliment, they know about my business, and they've got a notepad with a pen in their hand and questions pre-written, that blows me away. That shows me that they want this. So have lots of questions. It'll calm your nerves and it'll make an amazing impression on the person you're interviewing. Final thing before I kind of open the floor to some questions, or maybe we'll just have some collaborative conversation, is the follow-up. Very few people are good at follow-up, let alone following up. You can be rest assured that if that team leader or broker of record is interviewing you, what else are they doing? They're interviewing others. And if it comes down to it and the interviewee has two amazing candidates to choose from, what might ultimately be the tiebreaker? Well, the tiebreaker more often than not could be in the follow-up. What does follow-up look like? Well, follow-up is probably not an email. Why? Because if you're anything like me, they get a ton of emails in their inbox. So what do you do? What approach do you take? I always liken it to the peacock approach. And if you've never heard of the peacock approach, you kind of think of nature and how does the male peacock win his mate? Well, he does something to stand out. It's usually his feathers. It's something that makes a lasting impression. Here's a couple recommendations that I've got. Write a handwritten note and drop it off at the office. Drop it off in person. Guess who you're going to give it to? You're going to give it to that person that greeted you the first time you walked in. You might also be holding a second handwritten note. Who do you think you might give that to? Exactly. You might give it to that person that greeted you at the door the very first time. And in that note, it's short and sweet. It's a thank you, appreciated the time. If you do want a second interview, don't be shy to just come right out with it and go, when is the earliest we could schedule on either a follow-up call or a second interview? Don't be afraid to kind of go in for the kill or continue the process along. That will be very impressive for taking initiative. It shows you want the job and no one else is going to do this. If you really wanted to make an above and beyond impression, there's this little thing called reciprocity. So if you say there was a charity that this company was belonged to and heavily involved in, you might consider even making a small donation to that. And I'm not saying that's on the top of my suggestion list. I'm just saying it to spark some creativity as you may look to separate yourself even further with that peacock approach mindset. If you do have to resort to an email, I highly recommend a video email as opposed to a long kind of paragraph email. Video shows that the response rate and the open rate is significantly higher than if somebody has to read it. And guess who you're going to copy on that email that you're going to send to the broker owner or team leader? You guessed it. You're going to copy the person at the front desk who greeted you. So I've got these notes. That kind of concludes my interviewing experiences and recommendations. These notes are going to be available for you. We'll send them to you in an email after our presentation concludes. But just to kind of recap before we open this up to some Q&A or just some general discussion, which I would love if you guys wanted to engage in, is remember, the number one thing is the mindset. It isn't about you, make it about them. Of course, deep down inside, we know it's about us as well, but it's the way you'll come across, it's the way you'll approach the interview that will drastically change for the better if you just tweak your mindset. create a strong first impression, send something ahead of time that knocks their socks off. The first impression, like showing up on time, all the little things that we know to be true are true. They are true. And then look to gain a competitive advantage by impressing the person that greets you right off the hop. Do your homework, know what the company is. At the very least, try to figure out what they stand for. Recite something that you've learned about the company back to them. It'll knock their socks off. Ask questions, have them written down. It'll put your nerves at ease. It'll show that you've come prepared. It'll show that you are serious about this job. And then follow up. Look for the peacock approach in your follow up. Why? Because there's very few people that are going to. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. And why again? Because if it came down to it, that may separate you from the next best candidate in line.